My dear Shirley, you are an SAP consultant coming from Denmark. You had experimented with Tantra. After you also experimented with exploring relationships between adults, following lines of David Data. You have followed meditation and rituals. Which do you think is better, meditation alone or meditation and rituals together?
I definitely feel that the rituals and the mantras almost speed up the improvement of energy with meditation. I've tried just meditating alone, and after about 1 hour I can feel the change in energy in the room. But using the mantras and the rituals, I can feel that in a matter of 5 or 10 minutes. So that was one thing that really made me look closer at Srividya as a way of improving meditation and as almost a support structure of my spiritual growth.
It speeds up, accelerates the experiential levels.
Yes.
And almost a factor of 5.
Yes.
Okay. What, in your understanding, is Tantra?
At first I thought that Tantra was just about having very deeply connected, loving sex. That was the first thing I knew about Tantra, and that was why I looked at it, because that was what I was seeking. Something more than just this mechanical exchange of fluid. I was looking for a very deep, intimate connection with my partner. And so I thought that it was just about sex. But when I started reading a little bit more, I realized that Tantra itself is a spiritual path. And that really fitted in with what I was looking for anyway, because I was already trying to follow a spiritual path and trying to fix sex or intimacy. And so then I realized that the two are the same.
You think sex is spiritual?
I think that it's very spiritual. I think that we don't use it in a spiritual way.
Yeah.
I think that it's become so mechanical and so addictive and used in such a shallow and quick and dirty way. And I think that it is and should be a very deeply spiritual and deeply loving thing between a couple.
You can link sex to spirituality or to animalism, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think the spiritual way, it's a way of achieving bliss if it's used in the correct way and together, not just focusing on your own pleasure, which is I think what most people do in normal conventional sex, but by joining and giving pleasure, focusing on giving love and pleasure, it can become a thing of spiritual bliss.
I see you have been quite happy with practicing Tantra. How did you come to Tantra in the beginning?
I came to Tantra because of a relationship that was failing, which had a core of very mediocre sex, which I felt if I could improve the core of the sex, it could take care of a lot of other little irritating difficulties in the relationship. Because I believe that a very good sexual core can take care of a lot of other stuff. And so that was when I started looking for a way of improving sex, and that got me into Tantra.
You found Tantra. Where did you first hear about it?
Actually, in an erotic pawn shop
Wow.
in Denmark, which I visited with a girlfriend to look at what they had. And I saw a book. Actually, she picked up a book, and it was called Tantric Sex in 10 Minutes or something like that. And I thought, maybe this could work for us. And so I read a little of the book and I bought the book, and that was my first introduction to Tantra.
From a pawn shop.
Yes.
That's a good one. Okay. You think Tantra can transform the society?
Yes, I do. I think that it can make people less stuck in their egos, more open to focusing on other people and more open to giving and giving love.
In that way, it can transform by lessening the ego.
Yes.
You can, by giving more to us than focusing on yourself.
Exactly.
Basically, it's a question of reducing the ego.
Yes. Yes.
And the more you give, the more you get what you are giving.
Yes.
And what's the main? Okay, in Scandinavian countries like Holland, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, I hear that the crime rate is very low. Does it have anything to do with the practice and decriminalization of certain taboos, especially with sex and alcohol and drugs and stuff like that?
I think in a way that can have an effect. I think that it's by legalizing prostitution, it allows men an outlet in a manageable way where they don't have to resort to anything more brutal. And by having alcohol and drugs are not really legal. I mean, in Holland there are certain things that are legal. I think in a way that also does reduce a lot of drug-related crime or alcohol-related crime, but I'm not sure that, I don't think that that is the biggest crime reducer in those countries. I think that it's partly because they don't have too much of a population of very poor people.
Right.
But I certainly think that those things you mentioned have an effect.
So what is the prime factor in reducing the crime rate?
I think the prime factor is reducing poverty and perhaps making available things like drugs, which are normally forbidden, and therefore in order to sell drugs you have to be doing crime, and that leads to a bad element of people selling the drugs and competing with each other, which leads to crime between gangs and things like that. So I'm not really qualified to talk about that very much.
Do you think one-on-one relationships are best, or one-on-many, for example, one man, many women, or one woman, many men? Do you have any ideas on that?
I actually do share my personal ideas. I believe that that actually one man, many women is a more normal, natural way of living for a man. I think that men tend to have a higher sex drive than women, and so for one man and one woman to keep up with him, I think it's a little hard sometimes on the women. And I think that if we can let go of jealousy and possessiveness, I think also for a woman to have more than one man is also quite natural, particularly in these times, particularly in the West. It's not an unacceptable thing for a woman to have more than one man. And I think that if a couple can let go of their jealousy and need to possess each other and be able to share in a loving way, I believe that it's a very natural thing to have multiple partners, and even at once, to be with multiple people at once, sharing love with each other.
The big problem with polyamory is the jealousy factor.
Exactly.
How does that get controlled? One has a tendency to go more towards one woman than another, and because of beauty, looks, or the kind of pleasure you can get, and so on. So, what's your take on that?
I think
how do you control the jealousy?
I think that jealousy is part of the ego, and so controlling the ego will automatically control the jealousy. And when you connect to somebody, of course, initially you may be attracted by their looks, but when you really open yourself up to connect to people with love, you don't even see their looks. You're connecting to their soul. And so then it doesn't matter if they're beautiful or ugly, as in whatever conventions you might have, or whether they're thin or fat or old or young. It's their energy and their soul that you're connecting to. And then it doesn't matter. And if you can overcome the jealousy, I think it's mainly possession and fear of loss. So if your husband is looking at another woman, you would perhaps fear that you are going to lose him to another woman. And to live in fear is not right. You should live with love. If you love your husband and you are one person, and if he wants or needs or loves something else, it is you wanting and needing and loving that, and you should give it with love.
So looks matter only when you're in a shallow kind of a love.
Absolutely.
Not really when you're in a deep committed kind of a love. He doesn't look at the physical looks, but at the spiritual quality of interaction that you have with your partner.
Yes.
Right?
And not even with your partner, with everybody.
Everybody.
With everybody.
That's right. Very nice. How do you get better human relationships in marriages?
By stopping focusing on yourself and your own needs, and opening up and focusing on your partner and their needs, and again trying to minimize the ego and maximize love between you, becoming one. Their needs are your needs and their pains are your pains, and allowing them to be who they are and encouraging them to be something better if they can be.
If you really love a person, that person's happiness should not cause misery to you.
No.
Right?
No. And that person's misery should not cause misery to you either.
Correct.
Yes.
So it should not become a codependent behavior,
Yes.
but co-promotional kind of a behavior.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. What's the role of intuition? How do you develop intuition? Is it by reducing your ego and moving away from the concept of yourself as an individual, the concept of a self as a community? How do you achieve that transformation? Do you believe that intuition plays an important role in leadership?
Yes, I think intuition plays an important role in life, and I think that the way to develop intuition is to trust, to open yourself to spirituality and trust what the universe is telling you. And if you can do that, yes, of course, you are overcoming your ego doing that. And if you can use that in relationships, it's so much better than using what your ego is telling you to do. Because
management always has this problem of having to take decisions with not enough data. And so they have got to have some good batting average. They have to develop some intuitions to deal with those situations. What exactly is the role of intuition in leadership, in management, and how do you develop that intuitive behavior in creating leaders?
I think that in a management situation, one of the most important things is developing a relationship of trust with the people underneath you, and openness and honesty, which cannot happen without trust. And if you're open and honest with each other, and if you are open to your intuition and trusting what your intuition tells you, and if you can communicate in a way of not having your ego in place, of feeling if I ask something it makes me look stupid and nobody's going to trust me, or if I say that I don't understand, somebody's going to think that I'm not good enough to do my job. I think that it's really important to be able to be honest in the workplace without fear of... Exactly.
Fear.
Fear
to have their own communication.
of getting getting bad treatment because of your honesty. And I think that many people will not admit they don't know something, or they will not ask questions because they fear that it makes them look stupid and it can affect their job progress. So if a manager is intuitive, he could encourage that person. You can see that that person is holding back, is too afraid to ask, and then he could encourage them and reassure them and build a relationship of trust and honesty, so that that person could feel able to say what is true and to ask what they need to know, and that the manager can also honestly give them better direction.
What you're saying is intuition is not a one-person thing, but a community thing, where trust is the ruling factor. Is it right?
I think as long as one person has the intuition, they can encourage the other people to be trusting and to open up. I don't think, of course, it would be perfect if everybody had the intuition, but they normally don't. As long as one does, that can be enough to encourage the other person and to lead them into a way of speaking honestly.
So who is the leader? One who serves his people, or one who dictates what has to be done?
One who serves his people, or one who
serves his people, or one who tells you should do this?
Oh, goodness, wow, one who serves. Without question. A good manager will see the talents in his people, and he will help them to develop their talents, and in that way the job will get done in a brilliant way. If he's just saying, do this, do that, because I know the best, he's not getting anything out of those people. He's just getting his own limited knowledge and some forms to just do what he is telling them, instead of encouraging them to contribute to the process.
So a leader is one who serves his people.
Yes.
Right? Not the other way.
Yes.
Okay. We have been here for about 3 days.
Yes.
I would like to get some idea about what we have been doing right and what we have been doing wrong.
Okay.
There may be certain things that you liked in the devipuram,
Yes.
some things you didn't like.
Yes.
Can you expand a little on your rights?
Okay. Yes. What I particularly like about devipuram is that it's very natural. That I can get the experience here of living very close to earth. Of course, we have a roof over our head and we have a comfortable room, but I really like that we don't have all of the mod cons, that there are flies and mosquitoes and stray dogs and cats, and that we eat with our hands. I think that it's very natural, and it's a wonderful way of cutting away the crusts of civilization, if you want to call it that, and living very close to nature. Flies are also part of the earth.
They also have a right to live.
Of course they do. We're not spraying them and getting rid of them, we're just waving them off our food. I think that it's a really lovely way to live. And I think that everybody should experience that and bring more of that into their normal life.
How do you dislike about this place?
I don't actually dislike anything, but I think that I would have enjoyed more if there was perhaps more of a structure to the day, some sort of activity or event in the morning and one in the afternoon that people could join if they wanted or not. Some more information about where everything was and the time schedule. And also what I would have really liked is like a beginner's guide to Sri Vidya and a beginner's guide to how one worships in a Hindu temple. Because I come from Denmark, I know almost nothing about the Hindu cultures and what is correct and what is incorrect. And I'm afraid to do things because I'm afraid of insulting anybody who does understand how things should be done. And so if I were to get some sort of a guide to say, when you come to a temple, you must first worship Ganesha, and this is how you do it. And then you go to the main temple and you walk around 3 times or whatever one does, because I don't know that. And that when there is a priest there and he is doing this sort of ritual, this is how one should behave and this is what we should do. And when there is a flame presented, you should... I mean, I know a few little things, but I don't know enough. And I think that if there was some sort of a guide as to how one could here at devipuram actually get involved with the worshipping of the gods. And one could follow that every day and then also have these potential activities in the mornings and afternoons or evenings. I think it would give a wonderful structure to the way that I could connect spiritually with the temple and the deities.
You have received an empowerment ritual in Kamakya.
Yes.
How did it feel to be in the place of genital of the mother and be worshipped in your natural state? How do you feel about it?
It felt I felt very honored and very privileged to be participating in such a thing. And I felt a very, very strong energy and a very strong connection to the goddess during and after the ritual. Also before, there was a build-up of very special energy that I got from it. And it moved me very much emotionally. To feel that I was worthy of such a thing. It was very humbling. It was a very, very meaningful thing for me.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the card there. I appreciate your sharing this thing with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, it was a privilege really talking to you and sharing your visions and the views on how the world should be, human relationships. Would you recommend any particular book for the seekers who want to experience the spirituality in fun?
I think that everybody should read David Data because his books they're very focused on Tantra in sex, but Tantra in sex as a way of connecting to God and as a way of bringing so much love into your life, not just with your partner but with everybody. And I think that particularly because he is a Westerner and he's writing in a way that Westerners can understand, it's a very good entry point to people to see what Tantra can give you. And then from there to potentially move into a more formal religious environment for Tantra like Sri Vidya. I think when you're seeking such a thing is a very natural next step.
So that's a good entry point.
I think
Very good
so.
entry point.
Yes.
Well, you have got to give up everything that you think is yours to be able to surrender to somebody else as a partner, right?
You do.
And that's very empowering to that person and to you. And okay, I thank you very much for being with us, and I appreciate your presence here and sharing your vision. And may Goddess bless you with infinite peace, love and bliss. And may we continue to participate together in taking this place to further heights of spirituality and fun and entertainment and learning.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless you.